As members of the committee are aware, I was selected as the ambassador to represent the Intergalactic Union on a visit to what humans call the Sol System. The first such visit, the Galactic Diplomatic Alliance, GDA, has officially made since discovering these people some 80 years ago. This was an unusual step, and one that had no small amount of controversy and concern surrounding it. When humans were first discovered, they were asked, as all new species are, if they would like to join the GDA. Their response was a polite but firm no. They also, again politely but firmly, requested that we not visit their cradle world unless we received permission and flight plans from one of their government agencies. This wasn't unusual, as there are many isolationist species in the galaxy who have no desire to be part of broader galactic affairs. Furthermore, as their system was far removed from most of the other galactic civilizations, and as their technology seemed quaint, there was truthfully little interest in involving them anyway. However, the notion that humans were isolationists was quickly turned on its head with the establishment of the colony they referred to as Alexandria. After the initial infrastructure had been completed to sustain a population, a task they had apparently begun well before we discovered their people, the humans opened the colony to all. Not just to all humans, they invited anyone who wished to live, travel, or study there to come as well. Although slow at first, visitation and immigration from the broader galactic community to Alexandria soared. This introduced the galaxy to many of the goods and cultural works humanity had to offer: food, music, their sciences and education systems, construction methods, etc., and ours to them. Trade skyrocketed, as well as talks of asking them again to join the GDA. So we did, and yet they again declined. This confused us, but we had learned a little more about them since then. While they weren't necessarily the isolationists we thought they were highly fragmented. There was not a singular human government, but hundreds of them. Alexandria itself was recognized as an independent entity, separate from any of the governments in Sol. To say that would make it difficult for them to choose any singular ambassador to represent them in the GDA would be an understatement. Still, they wouldn't be the only fragmented species in the GDA. The Quigwath, my own people, have no less than a dozen governments. This is perhaps one of the reasons I was chosen for this assignment. But we have our methods, and they seem to work quite well, if I do say so myself. Still, the humans refused, and the GDA simply shrugged in response. If they didn't wish to, we weren't going to force them. And while trade had drastically increased after the establishment of Alexandria, it still represented less than a fraction of a percentile of the total trade any GDA member was involved in, as it was still in a rather remote area of the galaxy. We still believed we had little to gain from them, and they couldn't be of much aid anywhere outside the remote corner of the galaxy. Or so we had thought. That was until the Shutik invasion began. As the committee is aware, the invasion began on the outskirts of our territory before swiftly expanding inward. At the same time, they began invading systems closer and closer to the Sol system as well. Thankfully for all involved, Alexandria was on the opposite side of the Sol relative to the direction of the Shutik's invasion. We resisted them with all of our might, as their technology, or what could be called such, was practically archaic compared to our own. It would have seemed like we stood a chance. But we were quickly overwhelmed by their numbers. We could kill scores of them, but hundreds more were waiting in the wings. Our forces were quickly overrun, and despite our pledge to defend our member species from outside aggression, we were helpless to do so. Thankfully, the invasion would prove to be rather short-lived, as the most incredible and unlikely of things occurred. The Shudik invasion reached the Sol system and then simply stopped. For the sake of prosperity, should the future generations be reading this and somehow not be aware of the GDA Shutik War, let me say again, the Shutik stopped at Sol. They were not beaten back, they did not break against them, they were not crushed or some other often militarily minded way of saying that they were defeated. The Shutik reached Sol. Then every single member of the species that was off their homeworld in the entire galaxy came to a complete stop, turned around, and went back into their ships. How did they accomplish this? What did they do? We did not know. Truthfully, we weren't even aware that the Shotek had reached the Sol. That was until we demanded reparations from the Shotek, which they unexpectedly began to pay back with human credits. The results of the first delivery of such credits are classified by the GDA intelligence agencies at the highest levels. I was briefed on some of it prior to this assignment, but it was still mostly black pages. All I really learned from them? The delivery was made by Shatik Drone, who displayed an almost childlike level of intelligence. Simple-minded? Perhaps, until you remember that, during the war, Shatik drones possessed virtually no intelligence whatsoever, unless they were under direct control of the Queen's or one of her Farmines. I would later learn that this was because the Shatik had developed artificial sapience for its hives. Coincidentally, I learned this from the humans, who make no secret of having helped them develop this technology, though I'm sure it was included somewhere underneath the sea of black links the intelligence agency of the GDA gave me. What I also learned, piecing together more snippets than I really should have had to, was that the drone revealed to the GDA that the Shudik stopped the war and were willing to pay reparations after engaging in diplomatic talks with the humans. And this is why it was deemed of the highest priority to send me to the Sol system, cutting through the humans for more complex and convoluted bureaucracy than what the GDA possesses. If they could somehow find a way to open diplomatic channels with a force that had, to the GDA, been so unwilling to negotiate as the Shudik, well, backwater or not, we needed them in the Alliance. And this is where I must get to the heart of my report and let those in the GDA know that, sadly, humanity will not now, nor ever, join the Galactic Diplomatic Alliance. Their reasons are unusual, but it makes sense. It could never be fair. Let me try to explain, using what I witnessed firsthand. When we first arrived in the system, our pilot, who was provided by the humans in order to better coordinate with space traffic control, remarked that he was grateful that it was light traffic. I've been to Fleet Day parades on Halcon. The sky's so congested that you can barely see them through the numerous craft flying overhead. This was worse, far worse. As we neared their homeworld, a planet they called Earth, it didn't get any better. Still, the pilot seemed nonchalant, relaxed even, despite there being so many craft around us that even the light of their home star, and all other stars for that matter, was completely blotted out by all the craft around us. If you can even begin to comprehend that, then you will perhaps begin to understand that there is likely another reason that the Shudik Swarters, hell-bent on expansion due to severe overpopulation, responded diplomatically to humans after reaching the Sol system rather than warring with them. Humans outnumber them by a factor of at least 10 to 1. No, that is not an error. No, that number is not including the populations of the colonies humans possess. And no, humans did not come from another galaxy, with Sol being their first colony here. In this single system, the humans possess a population that outstrips both the Shutik swarms and the entirety of the GDA combined, and does so by a massive margin. Honestly, even seeing it firsthand, I cannot fathom how they did it. The Shutik likely made peace specifically to acquire that knowledge. Humanity didn't simply tame the soul system, they conquered it. If there was a rock big enough to stand on, they built a city upon it. If there was no such rock, they built a continent there anyway. Endless streams of ships traveled to and from these places, billions upon billions of them, most of them with pilots and crews on board. So then, let me be clear on why the humans will not join the Galactic Diplomatic Alliance despite seemingly being amenable to it. It could never be fair. If the humans joined based on the species clause, they would only receive a single vote that represents the will of, and my best estimate, since our sensors gave up at attempting to count the number of ships around us and simply gave an error message, at least 3/4 of the galaxy's population. On the other hand, if humans demanded a vote proportional to the size of their population, the GDA would be dominated by them. I understand why the committee, and the alliance as a whole, would otherwise want the humans on board. Their technology is actually far more advanced than we gave them credit for, more so than any reading this likely understands, as most vessels that venture beyond their cradle are considered primitive by their standards. Their cultural works and goods are highly desired, yet affordable to all from the lowest born to the elite, and they were able to engage diplomatically with a species that ignored the attempts of all other races in the galaxy. But such an occurrence will never come to pass, and I believe they refuse to do so for our sake, more than theirs.